Alright, today I am going to model for you what we're going to be doing for our kids. I went ahead and recorded my training early. And what I'll be showing you today is how to take something that you previously used in your classroom, like here, I used to use quadratic formula notes to teach my kids, and I went ahead and turned it into interactive notes that I can use in Google Classroom and have the kids do the same sort of things that we would usually do in the class. What would help best is to have, honestly, a PDF version of the activity that you used to do. PDF will work easier or will be better because you can expand it in Adobe Reader. And the first place we're going to begin is going to be at drawings, that is plural S, drawings.google.com. Now this is going to bring up a ratio of 3 to 4 sized screen. That's not what I'm going to want here because obviously I had originally an 8 by 11 picture or set of notes for my kids to use. So first and foremost, I'm going to go to File and Page Setup, and I want to adjust this. Now usually, since I already know that it's an 8 by 11, I would set up here. Now I have already learned previously that don't change the inches. Now the cool thing is though, is by going here you can actually change it to pixels, which is what I do want, and I'm actually going to write that number down, 768 by 1056. Now if you are into digital imaging, then this ratio definitely sounds familiar, or if you like TVs. So I'm going to go ahead and apply, and you want to have it in the unit of measurement of pixels because the more pixels you have on there, the clearer your image will be. Now you'll notice that I have what seems or appears to be an 8 by 11 document. Now I have learned this one the hard way, so I'm going to go ahead and show you something that I'd like to do a little differently to make sure that it's a bit more seamless for our kids. Rather than having an 8 by 11, I actually want it to be an 11 by 11. So I'm going to change this again in my pixels to 1056 by 1056. Okay, now I know it doesn't really make sense right now, but don't worry, it will in a bit. So next step, go ahead and bring up your PDF document of whatever set of notes or activity that you want to work on. And if you don't already have your snip tool pinned to your desktop like I do, then please, you want to get used to it. So bring up your snipping tool. If you don't have it, just do a search here, type in snip, and it'll immediately bring it up. Now you can do the Control N or just click New. I'm going to just take a nice cropping here, and actually, you know what? Rewind. I'm going to show you why I want to use the Adobe Reader in comparison to just having the document in Word. Okay, sorry about that. I just realized that I was in the wrong Adobe Reader. So what I like about Adobe Reader is the fact that you can change your vantage point. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate my view either clock or counterclockwise, because what essentially you're doing is you're making this bigger and creating more pixels to use. So let's go ahead and try this again, and I'm gonna snip it as close as possible. And honestly, I really don't need all of this extra white space, but it's gonna help me try and figure out where exactly I want this to end. So the cool thing about snipping tool is that as soon as you use it, it's immediately copied, so you don't have to click copy. You can immediately paste it to wherever you want to go to. It's back here to my Google Drawing. So I'm just going to use my shortcut Control V and paste it on in and rotate so it's right side up. All right. So it more or less fits on there. I'm just going to go ahead and stretch it out so it fits perfectly. Now you'll notice that I have a bit of space empty here, and I'm going to be using that in just a bit. Don't forget to rename it from Untitled to something that you actually want it to be. And this is where the magic happens. So once you have it correctly titled, I want you to go to File and then Download. Now, what I've learned over doing this a couple of times is that PDF won't work, obviously. JPEG will come out with extra colored pixels that you don't want. PNG is the one that you want to save as. I think I've also had some luck with the SVG, but I can't remember. For right now, I'm just going to keep it with PNG. Now you'll notice that it comes down over here, and you'll find that obviously in your downloads. And here I refresh my downloads, and it's right there, Quad Notes. And we're going to be using that. So I'm going to put that off to the side. And then we're going to open up a new slides.new will get us a new blank sheet to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag my cursor to highlight everything and delete. Now, I'm going to open up Page Setup. And this is very similar to what we were doing in our drawings.google.com. I'm going to change the page setup to be custom to, again, oh, I should have left that, the 10, oh, sorry, to pixels, 1056 by 1056 pixels, and apply. Okay, so how do I make this image non-editable? We're going to right click, again that was right click, and we're going to change our background. You're going to choose an image, and I'm just going to open up my downloads and I'm going to drop it in there. Alright, ta-da! So now I have my background. I can't click on anything, and obviously I couldn't do that anyway to begin with, but I do have some extra space that I usually don't have in my notes, and there's a reason for that. To go get some icons, and where you can find some free ones, a lot of free ones, would be the nounproject.com. There we go. Like I said, it is free. You can create an account for it to get a couple more and pay for it. But the ones that are free, honestly, you can get a lot. So I had used this and I got a couple of icons, and I also created my own icons here in Google Drawings, and I'd like to show you that next. So for these particular notes, rather than having the kids have to miswrite something, I went ahead and simply used a whole bunch of, I just inserted, put a text box, and I downloaded a whole bunch of different fonts. So I just wanted to get one that looked cute. Now, I had already done this one before, so it's already typed all out here. Now, the cool thing about this on drawings is that you can actually create your own transparent GIF images. So if you simply drag your corner over, you could go and save. So I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to download a PNG, and I'm going to save this image here. Now, whenever I open that, I have created my own transparent GIF image that I'm going to be using in my notes. Back to my notes, and I know they look different. I'm sorry. I realized that I had made a copy of some notes that I didn't have everything on. So now that I'm here, I want to start adding on some of my icons to make this an interactive set of notes. So I went ahead and took all of my icons that I created previously, because I'm not that fast, and I copied them on over here. So I'm gonna highlight that again and move it on up. Alright, so The reason that I this time gave myself a little bit more space is because I didn't do that last time, and my kids who were using cell phones couldn't see everything whenever they downloaded Google Slides. So what you may want to do is keep that in mind, that a lot of our kids aren't going to have an actual computer, and they're going to be seeing everything that you have that looks beautiful and awesome. They're going to see it all on their cell phone, and things don't always show up. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of move my numbers over. Now, what I've done here is just created a space that they can drag and drop information. I have also inserted a text box that all they have to do is double click and start typing in, not fart, sorry, just typing in whatever I type in during my notes as well. So as I'm going through the notes, I tell them a squared, usually, or I'm sorry, just A is the leading coefficient, and I want to highlight that in green. So usually we would have our highlighters in class, but since we don't have that option, I went ahead and put a whole bunch of copies of this A in a box in green, and I'll tell them, now you highlight any other A's that you see in the quadratic formula, and they can simply drag and drop all of these A's into the correct spot. As we continue through, we finish highlighting everything, then we start talking about the definition of a discriminant, and they can go ahead and type in there what the discriminant is, which is b squared minus 4ac, and so on and so forth. Then we talk about how the discriminant actually helps us out. So we would say we have, there we go, we're going to put our 2 here, and then we would continue to move our information on over. Now you'll notice that I even have this number here for some reason that you can't click on. I'm a stickler for interactive notebooks being numbered. So this was actually, it landed on page 37, and a lot of my kids, even though I tell them at the end of our notes to label their notes, they don't. So I went ahead and labeled for them. So what I wanted to do was show you guys how this looks in Google Classroom. So I saw one of my students did a really awesome job on their work. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up, to view the assignment. And Mr. Cortez, let's go ahead and take a look at his work. Just for those of you who are not familiar with what assignments look like because you've never used it in Google Classroom. Gilbert went ahead and highlighted all the correct variables, and then he also typed in the definition of a discriminant and correctly moved in all of the objects here. Now, we had a second page. We had a back page, and in 2 of the examples, I went ahead and wrote out, of these 4 examples, I did 2 of them with them. Now, on one of the examples, I had actually showed the children how to open up a brand new drawings.google.com, and switching over to the scribble option, you're actually able to draw on drawings. Well, duh, that makes sense. And for some of our kids, they did have touch screens like iPads or their cell phones, but they didn't have paper. So I showed them how they could easily use the scribble function, and that's a very ugly 4, and then maybe an X plus 2 is equal to 8. Now that looks pretty ugly, and that's because it was done with a mouse. It can get a lot prettier, but my kids are really used to using colors in the classroom, so I really like this option because a lot of the times my kids don't have that feature available at home. They would usually use my colors and markers. So what they're able to do now is continue, doing their math, and they can switch colors now. and they can show me that they're going to use the inverse operation and reduce that out and do the same thing to the other side, and then they can just switch colors and all that fun stuff. So this is just showing an example. Again, you would come over, download into a PNG. So Gilbert had shown us an example of that, and that's why I wanted to show that to y'all. Let me bring that up. So he went ahead and showed his work after he finished solving, using the quadratic formula to solve this quadratic, and he got to show me all of his work, which I thought was awesome. Now, not everybody opted to use that option, even though I gave that to them. Like, let's see here. Instead, others, like, take this example. Whenever I initially looked at it, I was like, oh dear, he didn't follow any of the notes. Now, I did have a flipped classroom all year round, so a lot of my kids were used to doing everything on paper. So not only did I give them a digital set of notes, I also gave them the PDF version of these notes so that they could write them out, because I know a lot of them like to do that. And in this child's situation, he didn't have a printer, but he did not mind sitting down and writing out those notes because it wasn't too much to write down. So Chris went ahead and wrote out all of the front side, and he filled it out correctly. And he attached a picture. He simply took a picture of his work and attached it to the slide. And he also did the back side and showed all the work. He didn't like the formatting, and that's okay, because all we want really is for the kids to have practice on their own. Now, you can transform this drawings.google.com/background setting on slides to anything. Over the summer, I was doing Upward Bound, and we were building a Rube Goldberg machine. So here's my lesson, and sorry about that. So what they had to do was, I went through the slides, we were talking, I was telling them what their assignment was going to be to create the Rube Goldberg machine. So what I had them do was watch a short video that I embedded into the slide over simple machines. After that, I had given them this activity. Now, this is where I was telling you I learned the hard way that they don't really see what's going on unless you minimize your screen or build yourself a little bit extra space to include anything that you're going to have movable. Now, if you have something that you want to move and it's already, it has a space on your paper, then awesome. But if you have it out on the side, the kids will not be able to see it if you're at full screen. It kind of blocks it out here. So unless you manipulate this to kind of minimize it so that you can see everything, so right here where it's at fit, I don't notice that I have to scroll down and that there's images. So again, all I did here was I snipped and I added these in as PNGs. So here, this is going to fall under our wedge, and they had two examples, so they have to find another wedge. And in the video, they had a short definition of what a wedge is. So they double click and they type away. So that this technically was kind of a science project that they were doing. But let me know if you have any questions at this point, and I'd be happy to help.